Awesome. Good morning, everybody. My name is Ryan Ledford. I'm the COSI Success Coordinator at CSU Pueblo. As most of you guys know, this is our second to last COSI workshop for the fall 24 semester, and we're lucky to have our wonderful guest from the Counseling Center with us again. If you guys have seen some of the other Counseling Center workshops, you should know Elizabeth Saunders. But for those of you who are new, I'll let her introduce herself.
All right, shall we get to it?
Yes.
Let me just do this. Perfect. I don't know if this is the most efficient way, but let's see. How does that look? Can everyone see you okay? Or Ryan, is it fine? Yeah. So, hi, my name is Elizabeth Saunders. I'm a licensed clinical social worker and one of the therapists here at the Campus Counseling Center. Today, I wanted to just chat through, the attempt to reach some sort of balance in work, school, and life as you're part of all three. Hi, this is me. I did just want to share a little more about me. These are my dogs. Dusty is the one with black ears, and Delmar is the dog with brown ears in front of him. And they are absolutely integral to my life balance. I guess that's all I wanted to say about that. So what I wanted us to chat about today, I think this presentation can be in sort of two parts. I think sometimes we're looking for a little bit of a deeper sort of mental shift when we're talking about concepts of finding balance, but also sometimes we just need reminders of the very basics. So the first part of this is just let's review some basics, like what a textbook would say about work, school, life balance. But the second half, I thought we could dig in a little and I could share some exercises that I use. For example, if someone was to come into a therapy appointment, how we would talk about finding balance when someone felt really out of balance in all of those areas of life. Hold on. I'm going to pause super quick because there's some noise outside my office and I just want to quiet some people. Okay, sorry everybody, I'm back. Okay, so what is work, school, life balance? Again, welcome to anyone who's joining. I'll try to keep my eye on the chat, but feel free to use the chat and I'll try to remember every little bit to click on anyone's name or to check the comment section too. So what are we talking about when we talk about work, school, life balance? Not only sometimes do we have work and or family, but then adding in classes in the evenings on the weekends can really create a huge, just a lot. There are only 24 hours in the day, and at least some of those should be used for sleeping and eating, which just leaves so little time sometimes to feel like you can fit everything in. So like I said, two parts of this. I'm just going to play a little video so it's not myself talking the whole time. A quick reminder of the basics, and then we can dig in even deeper.
So what is ClickUp? ClickUp
Yeah.
is all-in-one.
Okay, we'll wait for this ad.
You can manage everything and anything related to your work, your documents, your chats.
Life is a bit of a balancing act. If you're a student, the chances are you're managing a whole list of activities and tasks each week, and keeping all of those things in balance takes skill. Between school, study, work, chores, friends, and navigating everything else you need to get done, there's not a lot of time left just thinking. And you need that thinking time to be able to make the big decisions everyone is asking you about. Where are you going next? What are you going to do with your life? Keeping everything in balance is tricky, but we have a couple of tips for leveling your life out. First, ask yourself if your current balance feels right. Are you tired or energized? Are you sinking or swimming? Then, take a look at how you spend your time right now. Where do most of your hours go? How long do you spend sleeping, studying, working, traveling, socializing, and on your phone? Next, think about your priorities. Is there anything you control? Or are you spending too many hours on something you don't really care about? Work out how you want to spend your time. How many hours you want to spend on each activity. Then build a plan to get there. You could use an activity tracker, a planner, or a diary. You change your schedule or your work hours. And you can even ask your family to help out. And don't forget to schedule time to just rest. No study, no friends, no work, and no activities. Just time out. Remember, you don't need to do this alone. Your mental health is more important than your grades. So reach out for help if you need it. The life balance skills you build now will help you throughout your life as things grow and shift and change. Want to learn more? You can find some tools to help you balance your life at the link in the description below. Starting your own business while you're in high school could be easier.
Sorry, excuse me. So I know that's just a very quick, basic overview. What I will say sometimes, well, I'll tackle this kind of in the second half. So when we hear things in that video, like your mental health is more important than grades, I think at this moment or at different times in my life, I might not have thought that as obviously, right? Times when we hear, feel free to ask, or don't forget to ask your friends and family for help. Sometimes in life that doesn't necessarily feel true. So I want to acknowledge how often in the therapy office, I'll have folks come in and it just feels stuck and impossible. And like there's not even a centimeter of wiggle room until we explore which of those thoughts are getting in the way of what's making us feel like we can't ask others for help. What's making it feel like our grades are at the top of everything else, right? So we'll explore kind of how to filter through that in the next few slides. But I also appreciate about that little video of approaching when we're having this feeling of a lack of balance as scientists. So our brain is not necessarily a reliable source of data when we are in our feelings. So when we're in our feelings, it can feel very much like, gosh, I haven't had a free minute to myself in 20 days. But if we start collecting data, we realize, well, gosh, I do kind of have Friday afternoons every week, but I'm not using that time efficiently. So my brain is not storing that data as like a window of time to find balance. So often what I find too is, and I try not to give too much homework for therapy, especially because we have so many other things going on, but sometimes people will find a homework assignment of just kind of keeping a week-long log of what's taking the most time, when do I feel the busiest, what is a free little half hour of space that maybe I could use in a different way. People frequently do find that collection of data to offer some sort of insight on why we're feeling so out of balance. So we end up, just to kind of speak to what this balance means, we end up first sacrificing our personal well-being, because in times of stress, that at least feels the most possible because we don't have to negotiate it with other people. So unfortunately, the things that get cut first might be all of our self-care routines, our sleep, our nutrition, because that at least doesn't involve extra time negotiating a compromise with somebody else. I think too, I want to speak to the stuckness we feel. We're generally on a very tight budget when we're in school. So it doesn't often feel like we have wiggle room in our job because we're so dependent upon that income, which is probably limited already due to having to make time for school. But when all of this comes together and we start dropping things off and giving up boundaries, illness sets in. We're more likely to have our immune response decreases because our immune system is fueled by nutrition and sleep and low cortisol. So it just all becomes this cycle of feeling really stuck and out of balance and overwhelmed. So, well, here, I'm gonna do these out of order. So speaking to the importance of balance, this goes hand in hand with our personal boundaries. I know many of these slideshows I do for you all or these talks probably overlap, hopefully not to an annoying amount. But I just think it all comes back to so many of the same themes. And I think there's some of the hardest themes for us to reinforce in our lives. And so hopefully it doesn't hurt to rehear them. Or my hope is that some little tidbit comes out in a different way that is helpful in that moment that might not have been before. But really, one of the most significant ways to seek balance in our lives is to know what our boundaries are and absolutely feel like we can commit to them. I know often there are repercussions to boundaries. So I don't want to make it sound like just setting boundaries is the easiest thing in the world. But I think we need to just pick the main ones. For example, I had a client, this is decades ago and in another state, but really identified how sleep and a secure sleep schedule was absolutely integral to managing their mental health diagnosis. And they would just be there, they would meet new friends, new acquaintances, new relationships. And right off the bat, it became, hey, I'm gonna probably set some boundaries around sleep. I want you to know it's not personal, it's for managing my own mental health. And oftentimes that will be a non-negotiable. So just feeling like they could be flexible perhaps with other boundaries, but that was the one that they steeled themselves up for any pushback they might get and knew that at the end of the day, sorry. At the end of the day, it was going to be crucial. So, what are boundaries? They're a safeguard to overextending yourself. They do include a self-care practice. Setting the boundary itself might be the self-care practice. You know, if we get a little into therapy or psychology concepts, it's the adult version of ourself looking out for our inner child or inner self that might not have been able to set that boundary before. Boundaries communicate what we are willing to accept in relationship with people and what behaviors or dynamics we just have to end relationships for because we don't have space for that in our lives. And their parameter, I say, well, this is some classic Brene Brown, but clear is kind. So if I am saying something that brings clarity, then that is inherently a kindness to somebody else. We're setting them up to know what to expect if they want to be in relationship with us. One of the biggest signs that one of our boundaries is being violated or we're overextended or we need to set a boundary is a feeling of resentment. So sometimes that can be my reminder if I start to get grumpy with my boss, more than likely it's less about them and more about that I haven't said no to them enough or reinforced my boundary of when I have to leave, that I can't stay late on certain days, things like that. Again, I'm not using these examples to make them seem easy as pie, but just to kind of point them out or maybe give you little tidbits where you could notice a space where it might be possible. So hopefully this isn't a video I've shown to you recently. I really love this therapist. She has written 2 books about boundaries and a workbook that I think is all very therapeutically sound, but just kind of speaks to the need for boundaries in order to have some work-life balance. Let me see here. We'll just get through this ad first. And this is kind of taking the conversation deeper than the other video.
I'm a therapist whose job it is to help people create healthier relationships. And let me tell you, it can be really hard to tell someone what you need. It takes a lot of courage to stand up and say, this is the way I want to be treated. Most of us aren't so great at vocalizing to the people in our lives what makes us feel respected and valued. It's true with friends, family, partners, and it's also true at work. You gotta set healthy boundaries. Boundaries can be an intimidating term, but they're very simply the expectations and needs that help us feel safe and comfortable in relationships. Work is the relationship we spend the most time in, and yet it's also the place where we have the hardest time setting limits. We're scared that people won't see us as a team player. Our employers have boundaries built in, like the time your workday begins and how many vacation days you can have. But work boundaries need to be a two-way street. Boundaries for your employer and boundaries for you. Setting them can help you feel happier and more fulfilled in your roles, not to mention less exhausted and overwhelmed at work. We often assume that other people have the same rules for life as we do. We think they can tell our preferences and know our feelings from our body language, but no one, not the people you've known for years, and certainly not your coworkers, can read your mind. You have to explicitly state what you need. Communicating what works for us is one of the kindest things we can do. The short-term discomfort is so worth it for the long-term ease of having healthier boundaries in the workplace. Here are 3 steps to help you get started. Step 1, identify the boundaries you need to set. There are so many different kinds. For example, you can tell a colleague what hours you are and aren't available to work. You can share that you need to leave the office promptly at 5 to pick up your children, or that you log off fully on the weekends to really recharge. You can tell them how you prefer to communicate, that you enjoy talking by phone rather than instant messaging or texting. Especially with your bosses, you can set boundaries around how you like feedback. You can say, I work best with clear deadlines. Can you please set one? Or you can tell them you like written notes on your work so you have time to digest the feedback. You can set boundaries on how you interact with people socially. For example, it makes me feel uncomfortable when you share gossip at my desk. Or, no, I'm not interested in drinks after work, but I'd love to go to a yoga class with you. You can even set boundaries around your calendar and ask that people ask you before throwing a meeting on it, as you prefer to be aware of what your day looks like. Step 2, think about how and when to make the statement. Boundaries are like classroom rules. You want to set them as early as possible. People do it all the time in the job seeking process. They may say something like, I have vacation planned for these dates. Will I be able to take my vacation? If we can go into a new work environment and with people already knowing what we can and can't do, that's a beautiful way to show up. If that feels like too much, orientation can be a great time to set boundaries. When your supervisor tells you the workday ends at 6, just flow it in. That's perfect. I need to leave work at 6. One boundary I want you to set right away is to take every single day of paid vacation. You've earned it. You need the rest, and recharging is good for work-life balance. And by the way, it's perfectly acceptable to set boundaries for yourself when you notice something in the workday isn't making you feel good. So if you get a headache when you have 5 meetings in a day, tell yourself that 4 will be your maximum. If you get anxious trying to respond to 200 emails on Monday morning, don't do that first thing. Break it up in half-hour increments throughout the day. I have a set of boundaries around my work. For me, I like working in 30-minute chunks. I don't like answering every email as soon as I get it. I like sitting with the information before I respond. You have to set in motion those new habits and practices that will make you feel at ease. And now comes the most important part of the process. Step 3, you have to stick to the boundaries you set. If you say you're not available after 6, don't respond to the group chat. If you say you're not available on weekends, don't be available on weekends. When you respond to emails or agree to look at that proposal out of those bounds, you're teaching people that the boundary isn't real, that it's okay to violate it. Consistency is really key here. That might mean restating the boundary more than once. That might mean reminding yourself why you set the boundary in the first place. Setting boundaries is hard at first, but the more you do it, the easier it gets. Boundaries are contagious. Once you start to consistently implement them, others will too. You might be the inspiration that helps them set better boundaries. Even if they don't have the courage right now, it's now in the back of their mind.
Okay, so I want to open it up just a little bit to some commentary. The first thing I just want to call out is there is inherently, I think, privilege to this concept, right? We've all worked at jobs where we absolutely would not have the idealistic version of setting boundaries that this therapist would encourage us to do. But I also think even though it can't be all or nothing, we can find some gray. So we might say like, this would never fly. I would immediately be fired, let go. I can't risk losing my job, but I do think we need to find the little bits of wiggle room that work here. So the two examples that I guess just one example. So when I was in graduate school, I was also working and also had a family. And my sort of way of doing that is during one of my lectures, would just leave for about 10 minutes in the middle of it. It wasn't an official break, but what it reminded me is that ultimately I do have control over the time. I might miss 10 minutes of that lecture, but the balance of taking that 10 minutes to go out and stretch outside or just hide in a restroom or something gave me sometimes that space to remember that I do have a little bit of free will. So I think too, well, I'll get into this in a little bit. I do just want to, I want to get rid of this. Does anyone have any comments, anything you'd like to put in the chat, either if you feel bold enough to share, like if this feels really impossible to you, or if there was a little bit of what we talked about so far that actually you might want to try. So I'll just be quiet for 30 seconds. I would love any kind of feedback or comments. If I don't see you, just unmute yourself and talk.
For me, this felt impossible in COVID because that's when I was finishing up my undergrad. And because everything went online, there was such a lack of boundaries even between like working and school and living because it's all in one place now. And I used to have my class open on Zoom on one computer, and then I would do Zoom work on my other computer at the same time while trying to do the dishes, while trying to do like everything else. So I guess I'm thankful now that I'm actually in a position to be able to like take a break, and we do get paid vacation now, which is something that I'm very thankful for.
That is a fantastic share. Thank you so much. Yeah, just every technological invention is a challenge, I think, of everyone's boundaries because there is this expectation and concept that we theoretically are all available all the time because we could be reached online. We could connect over Zoom. And this actually, I did remember my second example where it does help to kind of find a buddy who's also maybe looking at reinforcing a boundary because it is so scary and impossible to do alone. But I used to work at a previous job where we were kind of in a very open cubicle type of workplace. And it felt very uncomfortable if you didn't necessarily leave the building at lunch. It felt uncomfortable to use your lunch hour at your desk because people could see you. So they would walk up just assuming in the shared workplace that you were still available. But it took all of us that were the same role at lunch to reinforce. So unfortunately, then the one person that would break it did what that therapist was saying when we're not consistent. And then they would be like, well, I'm available even if everyone else wasn't. And we'd be like, no, like we all need to like have a united front and be a team Because that just helps those of us who really struggle with individually setting that boundary, that maybe we can find some strength in numbers too. So let me just go to the chat. A great reminder on balance. Thank you, Rebecca. Yes, we deserve at least a little bit of balance. It can be hard to stick to the boundary, and yes, and reinforce to people that almost seem bent on trying to break us from holding that boundary. It is really difficult, and I do encourage, this is something we talk to students about all the time, so anytime we can brainstorm with you. But it can be really challenging because there are some people in our lives who it seems like their sole purpose is to break us from setting boundaries because it just benefits them so much, and they don't want to have to do the hard work of accommodating to whatever change we're going through. I appreciate the commentary on the more we practice, kind of the older we get, the more weathered by life we get, that we realize just how integral the boundaries are in practicing them. It absolutely prevents burnout, balancing work and school. Yes. Oh, you guys, I appreciate everything that everyone commented on in the chat. So true. It's absolutely an ongoing challenge. When we get enough practice and get a little, realize the benefits of it, it can be super helpful. So I hope from this conversation, at least everyone, even if it still feels really impossible, that you can feel a sense of community, that it is something everyone struggles with. And that we can also kind of reach out for support on that too. And that it won't always be the ideal, but maybe we can practice it in very small ways. So the segue to that too is we sometimes have to set a boundary with ourselves and our past expectations. So I'm going to kind of move into what I would do. I'm going to say one more little bit. Oh, that's it right here. Just a few other kind of loose concepts around this idea. So the first is we might violate our own boundaries at times. We might have old standards that say, I have to perform a 10 out of 10 at work every day. I have to perform a 10 out of 10 in class, every class, all the time. And I have to show up for my family 10 out of 10 all the time, every day. I think we need to do sometimes a little reality testing with ourselves and say, hey, self, I think I'm going to agree to show up at a 6 out of 10 at work today. I'm going to get my expectations done, but I might, normally if I would allow myself an hour to compose this email, I'm going to allow myself to maybe accept that I'll leave out a little information, but I only have a half hour to give to this today. Or, ideally, I wish I could spend 2 hours between work and dinner time with my kids. I'm going to give them extra long squeezes and tell them how much I love them, but I can only kind of commit 1 hour this evening to that playtime. And then we make it up the next day, right? We kind of can shift our energy. So I think giving ourselves some grace to also not have to be a 10 out of 10 in every single area every day. I think the concept on this slide that kind of relates to that is sometimes instead of trying to pick the scenario that causes the problem to be solved or almost the easiest, is to kind of flip that concept on its head and identify that every choice I have to make today is going to be hard. So will holding a boundary, if I'm like, well, I can't set a boundary because what difference will that make anyway? I'll also use this scaling. So if I just feel completely like I'm going to lose my mind by the end of the day, if I don't have a little wiggle room, that would be a 9 out of 10 of intensity. I hate having boundary conversations too, but if I can manage the discomfort of the boundary conversation, maybe I'll have a 7 out of 10 day. So I hope kind of explaining that concept made sense. But I think kind of gearing ourselves up to like all of my choices today are going to be a pretty hard bummer. But if holding the boundary and giving myself just 10 minutes to cry in the bathroom is at least relieve some stress, reminds me that I have time to do that, and I've reinforced a boundary over time, that's the one that will stay true to our values. So I'm going to go on a little bit of radicalized a bit from a different PowerPoint I did, but I won't spend a lot of time on it. there is very much a movement, especially in our mental health field, of against the grind, right? Like the counseling center has all of this time to ungrind, merch, I guess I would say here. Very much a rest as resistance to dysfunctional systems framework. It has been in our nation's best interest to have the working class work for our whole history. So just recognizing how our history sometimes did not always have our mental health at the forefront, but was very much out of a go, which definitely benefits to that, right? Like we definitely can achieve our dreams when we work really hard. We want to be a place of opportunity, but at the cost, at what cost, right? So we owe it, again, this last reminder, we owe it to our fellow human beings to engage in this as a collective. I think if any of you are also in workplaces and positions of power and being in charge of other people, it's a great example to set, like Ryan said, like use your vacation because that shows the people working under you that they're also allowed to use their vacation time without judgment too. So I'm going to use this last little bit to show a concept that I do in therapy and to share a resource if that's interesting to anybody. I'm very much an advocate of like, if information's on the internet, you don't necessarily always need an intermediary of a therapist to guide you to it. Sometimes you can just seek the resource on your own and it's very helpful. So this is a free and open website. It's called therapistaid.com. And under this tab right here, they have tons of worksheets. The section I'm focusing on is here at the very bottom on the left, and it's about values. So when we're trying to find work-school life balance, to me, one element of that is, are my day-to-day actions in my life aligning with my values? If they're not, that's when we really start to feel unease in our body, in our mind, in our spirit. And if we can adjust our lives in just little ways so that our actions we're taking every day are connected to one of our core values, even if it's stressful and hard, we tend to feel more in control. We tend to find meaning in the hard stuff that we're doing. So I just want to show you some of my favorite worksheets for this. This is the most intense one, but this value self-exploration divides our life. I mean, we're dynamic human beings, right? When we're in school, it can often feel like that's taking up 75% of our identity and everything else kind of gets pushed to the side. The challenges with that are if we're struggling in a class, if our grades are reflecting something different, it can wipe out a whole feeling of our identity. So it's really important to remember, like, wait, my whole identity is not education, which I guess in this framework I would put under work probably. But I'm also a member of some sort of family, whether it's my chosen family or biological family. I may be in some sort of romantic relationship, if not marriage. I may parent dogs and cats rather than children, but there's a mentoring aspect to my personality. I might have some friends that make up who I am, my leisure hobbies, my spirituality, my sense of being in the community, and then my health. So just even remembering that human beings are dynamic and that we need to foster all those other areas so that when we do feel struggle in one, it doesn't feel like it wipes us out completely. We remember that we have balance. So this is like a big homeworky one. It's good for like big changes in life, but what it also helps us realize by this scaling is, for example, if I identify, like I kind of use this of the 9 domains noted and say during a really busy time of life, let's maybe just pick a couple that I deem as most important. And what that scaling helps us realize is if I'm giving 80% of my energy to an aspect of my life, maybe work, that isn't really connected to a value at that point, then that gives me data to work with and say, well, why am I trying 100% at this job that I don't even like? and it's not even one of the most kind of significant aspects of my personality. Maybe I can find ways to shave 10 minutes off here, to give myself permission to only show up at 70% energy. So I'm taking some energy home for my family. You know what I mean? So anyway, this is one exercise I'll recommend to people. The exploring values one, I think, is so cool to go through sometimes when we're in these times of life. What it made me, what that earlier video, the one that said grades are not more important than your mental health. And I shared like, there's a time in life where I would have absolutely fought that idea. But if I do this exploring values breakdown, it helps me remember like, oh, society's values when I was a kid, so that would have been in the 90s, were that grades were everything and nobody in my town or family were talking about mental health. So this worksheet really helps me say like, gosh, the value that grades are more important to my mental health applied to the me that was, 15 years old. That societal value actually doesn't apply to me anymore. So down below, I can start tracking the values I actually live by. I think it's so helpful. We bring, and depending on the influence of our mother and father, you could substitute those for other kind of people who raised us, or the values of family members that were really intense in our families. So maybe that exploration makes me realize like, oh, my father's value was show up to work 15 minutes early, leave 15 minutes late. That was his work ethic. Gosh, now that I don't live under my father's roof anymore, maybe I get to decide that I have a different value than that, right? So I think this can be a really useful exercise. These are just more open-ended values questions, but again, this one kind of applies to the example I gave. So kind of a journaling question number 1. Values tend to change as we pass through different stages of life. For example, the things a teenager values are usually very different than what a parent values. Think back to a different stage of life and how your values now are different and how they're the same. Such a cool exploration, because I don't know the ages of any of you or how many of you this has happened to, but man, I'll just use a really benign example. I started a hobby this fall that I've not done since I was 20, and holy cow, it was hard. And I didn't expect it to be, because in my mind, that 20 years was not like a real value of 20 years. So I was like, of course I can still do this activity with my body that I could at 20. No, I couldn't. I pulled a muscle. I was limping all over. It was so hard. And so I just feel like too, we lose track of the passage of time and forget to kind of connect and say like, oh my gosh, this value I've sort of been clinging to really has no place in my life. Or holy cow, this value has been a part of my life since I was a kid. This is absolutely one I set a boundary on. Because clearly it's one of my core values that's been around for a long time. So I want to pause one more time and open this back up to any observations, thoughts, or gosh, just to see if anyone thinks these would be useful or helpful. Any thoughts? All right, here's what I'll do is I will take the, I'm gonna take this link and put it in the chat. That way, if anyone feels like this would be useful, maybe over any of the holiday breaks. I guess I could specifically, I'll do kind of exploring our values in here too, in case anyone wants to save these. Again, I know it's about to be finals week, all of these things, but sometimes just a real quick 5 or 10 minutes to just connect in that, maybe as we're going into finals week, will really help us hold the weight of like, yes, doing well in finals is important and I'm going to commit as much as I can, but also maybe it doesn't have to totally overwhelm. So, okay, hopefully those links are useful or copyable by you. Okay, fantastic. So let me get back to just my guide here, and then all my contact information is here on the last one. So to review, an important thing to do if we're feeling our work, life, school balance is really out of whack, connect to your values. Again, some of the practical things, just remembering that my brain might say, I don't have 30 minutes to reorganize my calendar. Okay, but let's challenge that a little. Maybe we don't have 2 weeks to be disorganized. So kind of like coaching our brain a little to say like these errands sometimes feel tedious. Who knows if it'll actually help to update my Google Calendar or schedule in some self-care time. But gosh, if it's on the schedule and you have it in there, you'll be maybe more likely to do it. Practice with communicating boundary schedules and asking for help. Spiritual practices, those often go by the wayside at the busiest times of our life and can be the most grounding. Rewarding yourself with, I should have said something fun every day, but 5 minutes of just a commitment to a hobby nurtures that little moment. So kind with your self-talk, like that voice in your head should always just be coaching you in a positive way. Taking breaks, even if it's just factoring in a 2-minute bathroom break, even if you don't have to go to the bathroom, go in there, wash your hands, splash some water on your face, take 3 deep breaths, you know. Okay, so the counseling center is on the first floor of High Center for Health and Human Inquiry. It's where the nursing program is, if anyone knows. I think psychology is on the second floor of this building. So we're the first floor of the nursing room, and we're just the doorway before the health center because more people have maybe gone there. You can always call this phone number to schedule appointments. These last few weeks before the holidays, they're not letting us pre-schedule a lot of folks because they want us to be super available for walk-ins. So the first 2 weeks of December, our hope is that one of us will be available if you were to walk in during those 2 weeks. And then starting in the spring, we'll be back available for scheduling if like some regular counseling or therapy is something you're interested in. The other nice thing is we have a private on-call therapist practice that covers our phone line. So exact same phone line you would use to call, but available to connect live to a therapist to talk you through any kind of crisis that might be happening outside of hours. And I shouldn't have even used the word crisis because it could be anything. You're having a panic attack, you're feeling overwhelmed, anything, you can call that number and it's available to you as a student. We do have a couple more NAMI on campus groups happening. Those happen in the basement of the OSC. Oh no, maybe they already happened. Sorry, I made this from when I was going to do this in October. Keep your eye on NAMI on campus groups, or you could call our front desk and they might have a current schedule. The below are just, again, sort of larger crisis lines. And and another thing we do for stress management and balance here is many of us provide the AccuWellness. So the 5-point ear acupuncture, and that is also kind of more available and easy for walk-ins because since it doesn't take an hour of our face-to-face talking time, and you can just sit in the quiet room and have acupuncture needles in your ears, people love that for stress management. So I wanted to put that plug. And then let me visit this chat because it looks like Brian might have been managing it pretty well. So where on campus we are, how you can find us. Oh, great. Taylor, thank you. A NAMI group. I think that's what you're referencing. A NAMI group tomorrow from 4 to 5. Number for the counseling center. Perfect. Awesome. Thank you, Taylor. So a NAMI group tomorrow, November 20th from 4 to 5. And yes, I believe it's in the basement of the OSC. I forget the exact room, Tundra maybe, but don't quote me on the room. But just go down the main stairs before you get to the cafeteria and it'll be down there too. So, oh man, thank you everyone for your participation today. I love it when it just feels so lonely sometimes when I'm over in my office just talking at you. So I really appreciate that. NAMI groups are in person. I don't know if anyone else wants to speak to that. My experience is that they're in person, but they will hopefully keep going in the spring as well. And actually, NAMI is the National Association on Mental Illness. So many free resources on just their national website, but NAMI Colorado provides free and open support groups to people. So that's a great holiday tool actually to keep in your pocket if you want to just, if like holiday stress gets to be too much. Gosh, I wish I had a quick ready link. Maybe if any, Ryan, do you want to speak to anything and I can copy, like maybe you could help me close out, but I'll find the Colorado NAMI page that has links to groups for
Yeah.
anyone who might need some group support over the holidays.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Oh, could I have you stop your share real quick?
Oh, yes, so everyone doesn't have to watch my Google. Here we go. Perfect.
Awesome. I just wanted to say that I appreciate all of you guys for being here. We got such a great turnout. This time I think we had like 17 people, which is awesome. We'll also have one last workshop for the fall semester, which is our lecture critters one on December 6th. I believe that's the Friday before finals week. So if you guys want to take some time, go to Electric Critters with a friend or with your families. COSI is able to pay for your tickets for that. I will ask that in order for me to get the correct amount of tickets, that you just fill out the interest form that was in, I believe, the COSI newsletter 2 weeks ago, and then it'll also be in the COSI newsletter that comes out tomorrow. So if you are interested in that, just let me know via the link. And Elizabeth, as always, I really appreciate you putting on all these wonderful workshops for us. And I'm looking forward for the 2 that we have for the spring semester.
Fantastic. Thank you. Yes, today I hope was helpful. I so enjoy talking about these. I look forward to meeting any of you if you ever need to pop in for a one-on-one. Oh, I sent these as direct. Shoot, let me resend these to everyone.
And if you guys have any other mental health or any topics for workshops, you can always send me an email, just like with topic suggestions, or if there's something you guys think would be useful. I'm always open to suggestions and I'll try and work something out for that specific topic. Awesome. And I do see the NAMI stuff in the chat if any of you guys are interested in looking into those resources.
Let's see, did I get everything? I think, did we see everything on here? Was it to everyone? I think so. Okay. All right, everyone. Well, have happy holidays. Thank you. And I hope I'm looking forward to doing it again in the springtime.
Awesome. Thanks, guys. Have a great day.